folks coming into the room. Welcome to Compass Coffee Talk, our August 2021 episode. Come on in. My name's Steve Hoffman. I'm very happy to host you this morning from my international headquarters here in Boulder, Colorado. We are with Compass Natural and very happy to be of service with our educational series. My co-host, Bill Capsalis, who is the Executive Director of Naturally Boulder, part of the Naturally Network, which serves entrepreneurs and lots of products across the country. We're very, very pleased to have a special guest with us today, Michael Schall. Mike Schall is the Managing Director of Focal Point. He's the co-lead in food and beverage. And Focal Point is an investment banking firm based in Los Angeles with headquarters there. And Mike will tell us more about his current work. But also I met Mike through his work as a lead business development team leader at Whole Foods Market. And he's worked with so many brands and companies through the years. Also, before that, he was CEO of Manischewitz Foods, which is like the Goya of kosher foods, right? And also with a product that I thought was very innovative in healthy snacking, and that was Guiltless Gourmet. So Mike can tell us more, but through the years he has worked at a high level food and beverage and has helped a lot of entrepreneurs and organic product industry through. I also, before we get started, want to thank our sponsors, and they're in here somewhere. I have Genius Foods, which is bringing gluten-free, high-fiber breads to America from the UK. That's Genius Foods. Take a look at them. Presence Marketing, one of the lead brokers in the country for natural and organic products. Thank you, Presence Marketing. And then Naturally Boulder and Naturally San Diego, again, two hubs of the Naturally Network, which serve entrepreneurs in those areas. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to have you join us again with Mike Schall, Managing Director and co-lead of food and beverage for Focal Point. And hey, nice coffee mug you got there, Mike.
Good branding.
Good morning, Steve.
Questions for our veteran here in food and beverage, CPG, and the natural industry. So, you know, I will say the way I position this in social media, Mike, is that mid-level brands, large-scale established brands, and emerging brands, I think, can gain a lot of value in your perspective. So that's the way we put it out there.
Well,
Great.
first of all, Steve and Bill, thanks for hosting me, and thanks to our sponsors. Obviously, it's great to be here with you. You know, you mentioned secret sauce in the sort of the banner of this discussion, and you know, truly, I wish there was secret sauce, but unfortunately, there are no secrets in our business. And you know, so I think for early stage businesses here, startups, it's a listen up. You know, kind of learn from some experiential discussion. Mid-level, more mature brands, I like to say use one of Covey's, Stephen Covey's notions, which is sharpen your saw. You know, your brand is your most priceless asset, as is your culture. So, you know, when you're moving through from early stage or mid-level to, you know, the main floor, you want to make sure you have this physical, mental, and spiritual and you know, economic vitality to your business. I know that sounds a little strange, but the reality is without any of those as kind of a pillar, brands seem to drift and move away. In terms of, you know, the other thing I think that's really super critical today, and we learned, and I don't want to talk about COVID anymore. Everybody's sick and tired of talking about COVID, but the reality is these unforeseen circumstances and these what I call asymmetrical threats. You know, it's a term been bandied around, but things come and happen when you don't expect them to happen, whether it's supply chain, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's your load gets lost and the driver walks away from the truck. We need to be vigilant and resilient, especially now, especially when there's so much disruption and turmoil.
Yeah, Mike, you've had a pretty great career so far, and I suspect it's going to continue.
Thanks.
You know, we chatted a little bit prior to the call about, you know, sort of advising, and what advice would you give brands? And there's sort of like two worlds in front of us now. It's like sort of the Whole Foods of before and the Whole Foods going forward, and the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic and all that. But generally speaking, good retail strategy applies. Like, what are some takeaways you can give us from your experience and work with all those brands over the years?
Well, I think, fundamentally, when you talk about a brand and what a business stands for, you really need to focus on what problem the product solves. So whatever marketing, gadgetry, whatever techniques and tactics there are, and we know they're ubiquitous and they're plentiful, really need to focus on what does the product solve. For example, I use this age-old example, when people are shopping for drills and drill bits, they're really looking for a hole. They don't want to buy a drill, they want to buy a solution. So, I always start, one of the things I use, Bill, is I use a brand destination statement. And I'd love to make that available. It's something I've used for probably a better part of 20 years. It's a template. Anyone out there can contact you or Steve and you can send it out. But it's basically a focal point, sorry for the pun, that allows people to focus on what the brand positioning is, what the tone of communication is, and how we want people to feel and act with their business. So that's the start.
Good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you've got some lessons learned over the years, but in general, what's your sort of feeling of the state of things today in terms of brands and innovation and new things coming to market? I mean, you're seeing them both on the investment side and also in the brands you consult with. What are you noticing today? What's happening today?
Well, there, from an investment banking side, which is really quite a change from my experience at Whole Foods and even in the business development role at Whole Foods and investing there. But aside from the genuine connection that consumers want to a brand, I think the thing we're seeing out there, whether you're putting capital into a business or whether you're executing with a consumer or a customer, it's authenticity, it's transparency, it's ethos. So those are really driving investments, whether it's authenticity for ethnicity or whether it's authenticity for sustainability. Those are drivers that investors, whether they're private equity firms, venture firms, or even major strategic companies, are looking for in early stage businesses and mid-cap businesses really to gain value. But that genuine connection to the brand is crucial. And I guess, Bill, kind of looping back to Whole Foods, this may sound strange, but there's no profit without purpose. And that was one of my really key learnings at Whole Foods Market. And I kind of knew it before when I was CEO of B. Manischewitz, and it reaffirmed it through the years at Whole Foods Market, is profit doesn't occur without a business or a brand that has purpose. And you're seeing that flourish today.
That ties in a bit. You had mentioned earlier that you were recently named a senior advisor for the organization Conscious Capitalism.
Yeah.
I know that we've interviewed John Mackey on our show back in February, kind of a follow-on book, a bit of a workbook for leaders called Conscious Leadership, which follows those principles. So, you speak of transparency, purpose. I know that's those are very key elements of conscious capitalism. What role will you be playing there, and how do you hope to spread the word of this?
Well, Steve, it's been an amazing journey, having had the privilege of being essentially mentored by John and our leadership back at Whole Foods with this notion of conscious capitalism, this purposefulness. And my thought was I would always have that background and opportunity as what I call a passion project. The truth of the matter is conscious capitalism or mindfulness or purposefulness in business is another sort of emerging movement. It's been around, but you're seeing it get a lot of traction now. And again, with authenticity and transparency on one end of the barbell, and then purposefulness and running a business consciously with all its stakeholders is sort of the other end of that barbell, and it's converging. So my role as senior advisor at Conscious Capitalism is just that. I'm working with the team. with the chief executive and some of their leaders. I'm also talking to CEOs about encouraging them and giving them experience from my work with Whole Foods Market, and really what that translates into in an economic sense, because it does translate into economics.
How can they learn more? There's a website, right? Conscious Capital.
Yeah, it's consciouscapitalism.org, correct.
Yeah, we encourage business leaders to learn more, because I totally agree that a purposeful, driven business gets attention, brand loyalty. Funny, I heard today, I know you did not want to speak of COVID, but it's very interesting on NPR this morning. David Bronner was a lead interview talking about the incentives he provided to employees without mandating vaccines.
I think, again, kind of overlaying conscious capitalism and connecting it with your customer. Customers want trust and quality. And as I said, at Whole Foods Marketing, specifically marketing, which we're talking about secret sauce, was designed to enhance the quality of the relationship with the customer. So if you take that as an overarching strategy, right, whether it's conscious capitalism that gets you there, whether it's your influencer marketing or other tactics that you use either digitally or in more conventional spaces, you want to own that relationship with your customer. And the way to do that is through trust and through credibility.
Yeah, so interesting about owning your customers. We do have a lot of people on the call this morning who I'm sure are connected with brands right now, Mike, and we'd love to hear you riff a little bit on the channel strategy that you're seeing out there. Like, what are people doing in terms of direct to consumer and retail, and how is that balancing right now? What's your sort of view on that?
Well, that's a great question, Bill, because so many things have changed in the last 2 years. I mean, there was a point in time where we thought meal kits and direct to consumer meal solutions were on life support, and obviously that's current events have transformed many in that industry. The reality is a lot of those companies still don't make money, and as in the old days you'd say you can make it up on volume, but that's not the case. So I think there's continued convergence, and I see there's a lot of talk about hybrid retail. I would say the grocery stores, the butchers, bakers, candle makers have been around for centuries. Our current grocery platforms are going to be around for years to come. And I would liken it as an example to the way people thought of the movie theaters when Blockbuster, for those out in the audience and that know about Blockbuster Video, the video rental business, and then the video vending business, which was where Netflix started, to now streaming. So, movie theaters aren't going away. There's an experience to that. And I think there's an experience to grocery shopping, produce shopping. There's only so much produce you can buy online and get what you really want. Yeah. So that, and then, things like curbside pickup, things like, companies like GoPuff and Foxtrot. And let me just add this. I think another really emerging trend that you're going to see in the next year or two is what I call packageless groceries. So Steve, you and I may remember this as the bulk product sales probably 20 or 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Bulk is back. Yeah. So bulk is back. And companies like Purcell, which is a dispensing technology, and Tear, which are stores that you literally go into. Even Erewhon Markets has, for lack of a better term, a deposit system for their glass. So I think we're going to see this packageless technology occur in line with very quick delivery and people still going into the brick and mortar, Bill.
Really interesting. So yeah, there's a company in Boulder here called Nude Foods that's right on track with that comment you just made. What do you say to a brand when they say, I'm only selling online, that's it, I'm not doing retail. Retail's too expensive, I can't deal with that, I don't want to deal with the broker. What do you say to brands that you're advising or that that you're looking at from a focal point investment standpoint? We're only going online, we're just a strictly online business.
Well, they're only partly right. Okay. I remember coaching and advising a company a couple of years ago that had a fabulous digitally native business. And they came to me and they said, we really want to be in Whole Foods Market. And I said, so, okay, that's great, but why? Well, we need more access to more customers. We're only at 4% of the market. I said, well, you have very attractive profit margins now. You cash flowing? He said, yeah. And I said, well, let me repeat. Why would you want to go into brick and mortar? The reality is they peacefully coexist, right? And there is no better way for emerging and challenger businesses to establish themselves online. But I think there has to be a component with brick and mortar. The real challenge is what I would call the law of supply chain and demand, right? So it's no longer supply and demand, it's supply chain and demand. And you have to pay for a product going in, you have to pay to sell it, and sometimes you have to pay to pick it up. So whether that's online or whether it's brick and mortar or whether it's hybrid, those rules of the road will still apply. But I would encourage brands to always seek multi-channel execution. Online's a great place to start, provided you know your audience, provided you know what the problem will solve, and that there's a very, very powerful value equation, because that supply chain is going to cost you either way.
Yeah.
Bring up something, there's a trade spend. There's when we spoke of this earlier, you went right to margin, right to margin in the product, and I think that's interesting because, the margin with online and the margin with brick and mortar. Can you discuss what might be some differences or how someone can pursue? We talk about dual channel, but omni-channel strategies, I think, is the future.
Well, the product concept has to have margin, and margin obviously is sell price, which is driven largely by how the consumer interprets the value that they're getting from your product. The price is what you pay, value is what you get. And so whether that's digitally, and you're going to pay for fulfillment, you're going to pay for shipping, you're going to pay for data, you're going to pay for a lot of bells and whistles digitally, or whether you're in brick and mortar and you're going to pay for features or TPRs, and in some cases when real retail comes back, displays and bunkers. I think there's a trade-off there. And I'm sorry, Steve, couldn't hear you.
What's that? You said TPR. What is that?
Oh, sorry, temporary
Price
reduction. Sorry. Yeah. So whether you're getting effective use of those funds at retail is a big question, and that depends on what categories you exist in, how the product is used, what the household penetration rate is, what the frequency of purchase is, and the retailers. From my Whole Foods hat, the retailers and merchants will help or should help drive the success of that brand. They're going to know what works best in their stores. And so whether it's a display event or whether, again, when things normalize someday, displays and demos return, I think all of those play a very important role in marketing in brick and mortar.
Agree. Hey, Mike, you had some lessons learned, and I wanted to get to them because I don't want to cut you short on those. And we asked Mike if he could sort of share some lessons learned over the last, whatever number of years in his career, early and most recent. So wanted to ask you about those lessons learned. And
Sure.
I just want to mention also to our guests today, if you have any questions, you can pop them up in the chat room. We'll post them to Mike in the last 5 minutes or so of our talk here this morning. But go ahead, Mike Schall, lessons learned.
Well, first of all, I'm really standing on the shoulders of some of the most extraordinary people in the natural food and grocery industry. So to be clear, my lessons were based on those experiences with John Mackey and AC Gallo and a lot of the extraordinary leaders and store managers. I was in 340 Whole Food stores over a 7-year period. And so one of those lessons was, I remember Walter Robb telling me when we launched this exclusive brand called Engine 2, and it was very successful, an exclusive vegan brand in Whole Foods about 10 years ago. He said, you build a business by pick and shovel, meaning you work the business and work on the business every day from the ground up. And I never forgot that. That was a really important lesson. So, and the corollary to that is really, I was a manufacturer before I was a merchant. And I learned to look at products through the merchant's lens. And I'd encourage everybody to do that. When you walk in a store, when you look at the competition, look at it through the lens of a merchant or a buyer or someone that is executing in the store. Because if you simply put your brand out there, price it, and you package it, and you design it for the consumer, you're missing a very critical aspect of supply chain. So, pick and shovel, being a merchant, looking at it through a merchant's lens. And then I also confirmed, as I said earlier in the talk, that putting purpose first, leadership, conscious leadership is the best way to deliver stakeholder value. And it's difficult, right? Because some people, I'd say, are, not inclined to think that way. A lot of folks at Whole Foods Market were inclined to think that way, which is fortunate. But so, putting purpose first and explaining that to your constituents, to your work teams, to your leaders that you have to engage with. And then again, one of the cornerstones of Whole Foods Market, any brand is quality and standards, because quality, standards, and your brand are your most priceless and defensible assets. There's no question about it. So, those are a few. And like I said, one of the greatest learning experiences there was just dealing with very difficult problems that were confounding and difficult to solve. And as a leader in tasks, I had to draw upon a lot of different people. And as you can probably tell from my riff here, I drew them in and asked them to help me. The four most powerful words in the English language: help me, and I'm sorry.
Got it. What kind of trends are you following these days, Mike? And how much money does it cost to launch a food brand these days?
Well, let me answer. Yeah, the second question first is there is a lot of money on the sidelines. There's a lot of private equity, a lot of venture money, family office money for the right business plan, proposition, and point of preference.
Right. But Mike, it's like George Costanza. I know there are jobs in those buildings, but I don't know how to get to them. So, how does someone get to that money? You said there's a lot of it on the sideline. Could we just hop over the sideline and get it? What's going on there?
Well, compelling business plan. And I'd say, I've been a connector for the better part of 30 years. And I can't emphasize enough the ability, it's not networking, because that implies a quid pro quo. Connect with people who are like-minded, who share your vision, have a plan in a business that's purposeful, that's meaningful, that has a point of preference, not just be different from the competition, but have a point of preference, because that's what the consumer ultimately buys. And that's what the trade buys when they see that. But in terms of your first question a moment ago, Bill, there's a ton of stuff going on. I'd say, of course, top of my list, because I'm a vegan, is plant-based foods, right? We're way past the tipping point, way past, whether it's processed, whole foods, whole grain, gluten-free. The business is exploding, and there's extraordinary valuations taking place in plant-based foods. Food is medicine, been around for a few thousand years, starting to come back again. And not just in supplements. We're talking about microbiome. We're talking about fermented foods. We're talking about all of those things that are condition specific. And actually, two other things: cell-based agriculture, it's coming. It's really coming. And then, as I said, sustainability, packageless foods, systems that deliver product and value to the consumer in a more meaningful, more trustful, more purposeful fashion. Those are a few things.
Interesting. What are cell-based foods?
That's a good question.
Lab-grown meat?
Yeah, there are companies that are culturing animal cells and producing analogs that are actually real meat, taste like meat, feel like meat, and perform like meat. That they're grown in essentially laboratory conditions, or cloned from animal cells. So as unusual and as bizarre as that sounds, and it will for many years, it's another escape from the challenges of animal agriculture, mass animal agriculture now.
Yeah. As a vegan, I don't think I can see myself eating that stuff, but it'd be good for the planet if other people did. So right on. What's in the future for you, Mike? What's happening next? What's your sort of mid-range horizon look like here? What are you focused on? How are you spending your time?
Well, thanks for asking, Bill and Steve. Again, my purpose in life is to help others. And I am very fortunate in this investment banking role that I have now to help other business leaders and business owners, help them transition. Some of them are, very, very mature. They're looking for an exit. They've been in the business for 2 or 3 different turns in the barrel. and I have the great privilege of working with them, not only as an investment banker, but as a mentor and advisor to help them transition or transact their business. The other thing, as I told you, is I'm just such a devotee of conscious capitalism, and I'm so grateful to this group, Bill and Steve, our relationships over the years. Steve, our many excursions on John's ranch to talk about the philosophy of conscious capitalism and the things that work right when you're running a business with purpose. So that's my real passion, Bill, and I see that somewhere in the horizon. But right now, I'm in full-fledged investment banking fantasy camp and really enjoying it and helping others transition to the next step in their wealth creation.
Fantasy banking camp. Is that like baseball, fantasy baseball camp? What do you get to hang out with investors? What's that about?
No, it's really just, it's a term I use. I've been an operator for so many years, and then a merchant, and then did deals and was somewhat of an investment banker for Whole Foods Market. And now this transition it's the real deal. So I'm a full-fledged banker.
Okay.
With a purpose.
Yeah.
Michael, I'm looking at my notes, and one thing I wanted you to talk of that I'm not sure you did was something that was impressed upon me is when you spoke of the point of preference, not just point of difference. And if you're not a preferred brand versus just a different brand, it presents its own set of challenges. Can you speak to that?
Well, yeah, but by its nature, Steve, every brand has a difference, right? And those degrees of difference can be, in any form of attribute. It could be in packaging, it could be in flavor, it could be in nutritional density. Point of preference is something that consumers really are focused on, right? And that's going to be the tiebreaker. All things being equal, products with extraordinary value, products with extraordinary points of difference and uniqueness is the bid. The point of preference is the next level. So that preference could be ethos, it could be sustainability, it could be, just the connection, the trust and quality of a brand. We strive for that when we're building exclusive brands products at Whole Foods Market. And it had the quality, we had the standards, but what's going to make them preferred? And the preferred notion of that was the sort of the guarantee of quality, the guarantee of excellence that came with the brand Whole Foods Market. So that became a point of preference for 365 everyday value products, and significant difference from even fabulous national branded products. Does that make sense?
Is there another example you might be able to provide out there in the marketplace that you've seen in this regard and make you think about this?
Yeah, so if you have, like, all things being equal in the beverage category, for example, and we saw the rise and sort of bloom off the rose with kombuchas, right? So kombucha, all things being equal, probiotic, great flavor, and sustainably developed. In certain situations, you'd have a brand that goes over and above. So their culture, for example, the actual culture that they're using for those probiotics could be stronger, more efficacious, but another brand may have a better connection with the consumer, may have first mover advantage. So that would deliver a point of preference. It depends on your consumer is going to tell you what that point of preference is, but you need to be vigilant and observant to understand what makes you different from the competition.
Yeah, I think that's where the secret sauce is, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and let me just say, the classic example was Manischewitz, right? That ethos of that brand and being on everyone's Seder tables or around Passover was a brand that was incomparable to any other type of product in the market for generations. And that was a point of preference. Your grandmother used the recipe on the side of the package. That was point of preference.
Yeah.
Probably the first wine I ever drank.
You're dating yourself, Steve.
Hey, Steve, I'm noticing it's just a little after 10 right now. What do you think? Want to try to get some closing comments? What's your thought?
I'm seeing some folks saying hello. If you've got any questions, now's the time. And I might just, and if there are no questions, I just might ask Mike, what change would you like to see happen over the next near future that our industry can have an effect on? Because we are all pulling together.
Well, I think if you don't know my brand now, you won't know it. But I think a huge measure of humility and kindness from the trade and from our supplier and vendor partners. This is a time where I'd love to see people really show more purposeful leadership, not only with their brands but with their team members and coworkers. And also, for the customers out there, make themselves more available, allow people to listen more. We're shouting and screaming at each other and all kinds of media. And Steve, you know this better than other in the PR and communications industry. We need to communicate better. I need to communicate better. And so I think the next couple of years or the foreseeable future, as we come out of this really disruptive time when a lot of people have been sequestered and we're talking over video screens where we might have been doing this, on a visit to Boulder. I think as we come out of that, we want to show a measure of compassion. And I know that sounds corny, but it's true, and it's held me in good stead for 40 plus years in this industry. I'm very humbled by the contributions that I've been able to make and the people that I've worked with. I just say I feel like a little like Forrest Gump. I find myself in the company of really extraordinary people for no good reason, and it's been a privilege. So I hope to do more of that, and I hope other people will understand that you put purpose before profits, and it will deliver.
Yeah, Mike, comment in the chat room. There's nothing corny about your message, dude. it's okay.
Oh, okay. Very great.
People love you, and why you make a difference is you do treat everyone with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a very strong message that we all need to hear.
Well, Steve, let me just close by saying, as you may have seen, I keep a balance sheet. I'm honored with a balance sheet of human equity. And the fact is you want to run your personal life and your business in the same fashion. Ideally, you have no debt, right? You want to have a balance sheet that has a lot of owner's equity. And I've worked very hard, and I know many others out there. They're just extraordinary leaders in our industry, natural and conventional, that have built their reputations on doing the right thing and not doing because they owe somebody something or somebody owes them. And so I strongly encourage people to build that balance sheet of human equity, be forthcoming and try to offer what they can when they can. I know we can't do it 24 hours a day. We all have a living to make, but I think it's very important to have a strong balance sheet of human equity and owe as little debt as you can and do the right thing. So I'll leave on that message.
I want to write my personal balance sheet out now. Hey, listen, I would be remiss if we didn't address one quick question in the chat room.
Sure.
We got 30 seconds. Go. Do you see Amazon bringing food distribution in-house and replacing UNFI, and when?
Do I see Amazon replacing UNFI? Is that
Yes.
the question?
Yes.
I don't think they've figured it out yet. And I think Sandy Douglas, who's a terrific leader at UNFI, I think Sandy's going to revolutionize that business.
Okay.
The fact is, produce is not going to be done through Amazon like we all think it could.
Nice. Great. Thank you for taking that one on. Yeah, good. Mike, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Steve, I'll let you do some closing comments there, buddy.
Well, I think I'll let Stephanie Hawley talk. She says relationships matter, people matter, purpose matters. Thank you, Mike Schall.
Right on.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure very much to host you today. Thank you for sharing your insights, information, perspectives. It's really valued. folks, this lives on our channel, Compass Natural on YouTube. So it'll be there forever, Mike, to help educate folks in the future. Our next episode in September is with another Whole Foods market veteran, but who's also driving a lot of growth at online retailer Thrive Market, and that's Chief Merchandising Officer of Thrive, Jeremiah McElway, who's a very well-respected colleague and a good friend of now. So look for that in September. And Mike Schall, thank you again so much for sharing. And a big thank you to my co-host, Bill Capsalis, and our sponsors. Thank you for making Coffee Talk happen. And lastly, to you, thank you for listening.
Been a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for hosting me. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Go have another cup of coffee.